Hello, and welcome back to Friday Vinyl Club, where every day feels like a Friday and every album tells a story. Here we drop the needle on the albums that didn't just play in our lives, but shaped them. I'm Jamie, and each episode I invite a guest to bring along one special record, an album that means something deep to them, and we chat about the music, the memories, and the moments that came with it. It's not just about chart positions or critical reviews, it's about those personal soundtracks, the one that stayed with us long after the needle lifted. This episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Andy from Birmingham. I first met Andy at a gig back in 2007, and since then I've had the privilege of becoming great friends with him and his family. Andy's pick for this episode is The Weight of Your Love by the British band Editors. This 2013 album was a big shift for the band sound-wise, recorded live in Nashville with a fresh Americana vibe. But before we dive into the album and Andy's take on this record, let's rewind a little bit. Andy, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm all right, Jamie. I'm good, thank you. Good evening to you.
Tell us a little bit about your earliest musical memory and your connection to music.
My folks weren't really massively into music. My mum loved Elvis Presley, but then I think once they became parents, the whole music thing just sort of left their lives really, while they concentrated on me. But my earliest musical memories was drumming along to Top of the Pops circa 1973, 74. We had a pouffé, which was a round sort of stool thing, and I used to turn it on its side to kind of emulate the bass drum, and Mud was probably my favourite band at the time, and I used to write Mud on a little bit of paper and sellotape that to this pouffé. I had no idea what a bass drum was even at that point. I just knew that there was this round thing in front of the drummer on TV with the band name on it. So I just emulated that. And then I used to put newspaper on the arms of the armchair to make a snare sound, and used to play along with paintbrushes.
So you were a wannabe drummer.
I was a wannabe drummer at that point in my life, yes. And that's when I got into music. And in 1974, around that same time, I bought my first record, which was Teenage Rampage by The Sweet.
So I was going to ask you about your first experience with vinyls. How old would you have been back in 1974?
But you want me to tell you that? I'm trying to hide my age these days.
Well, listen, I would have been one years old in 1974. So you've got a few years on me.
I was born right at the end of 1966, World Cup year, just. So yeah, I'd have been 7 or 8. I paid it to death, obviously, as everybody of our sort of generation did when we bought records, and yeah, it was a great time, and that was it. That was the start of my musical buying life. Really, it was closely followed by Tiger Feet by Mud.
When you said you'd seen Mud on Top of the Pops, I just wrote down Tiger Feet. I did wonder if it was that one. So
yeah.
You said your mum and dad weren't big into music, but if you were playing around that age, you're buying singles and playing them to death. Did you have a family vinyl turntable? Did your mum and dad have like a collection, or was this something you kind of had in your bedroom?
They did. Dad did buy some music, not prolifically, but the albums are still there, and I, still have Mom, and the records are all still in the house. So Elton John, Rod Stewart. It was the early 70s. There's a David Cassidy single in there, "Killing Me Softly" by Roberta Flack. Bit of a mix, really, but that sort of early 70s vibe. But a sort of a passing interest and a few records bought. So yeah, I used to use the family turntable, but then I think my granddad had an old record player that I sort of acquired, and that was it then. That was up in the bedroom, and I was playing records to death.
So you've talked about, buying the singles when you were 7. I guess as you grew up and started getting into your teenage years, you'd have evolved into albums and maybe started to have an affinity to a couple of bands. Do you remember the first actual album you got on vinyl?
Yeah, well, I can't swear it was the first, but it probably was A Tonic for the Troops by the Boomtown Rats, which would have been 1978. So I think that's probably the first, proper album that I bought.
So from a family perspective, you've kind of had to plough your own path, really, when it's come to defining your own music tastes. And then eventually you'd have got to an age where you're able to go to a gig or two and start seeing things local area wise. Do you remember your first live gig?
Yeah. My first live concert. It was orchestral manoeuvres in the dark at the Birmingham Odeon in November 1981. That was my first concert. After the sort of punky new wave thing, which was mainly the Boomtown Rats, it was then the sort of the new romantic Duran Duran, Spandau, those kind of bands. And I really liked Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark. I think Enola Gay, the single Enola Gay, which was on their second album, that was a song that hooked me in. And so the first album that I bought by them on its release was their third album, which was Architecture and Morality. And it was the Architecture and Morality tour that I saw them. The second band I saw, probably early 82, was Altered Images. After that, I got into the Jam massively, and I was late to the party, really. I bought The Gift, which was their final studio album. That was the only album I bought on its release. I backtracked and bought everything, got all the albums. Then I think my next gig was the Jam's final tour. And I saw them at Birmingham Bingley Hall in December of 1982. They split up that year, and Paul Weller went on to form the Style Council the following year.
You got passionate about music and playing music as well. Is that through school or something?
Around the time of getting into the Jam, I then wanted to learn the guitar. And a mate of mine had this acoustic with horrendous, probably the wrong gauge strings on it. And it was very painful to play. But that was my introduction to a guitar. And I got bitten by the bug. I borrowed a guitar from a lad over the road from mum and dad's. And again, it was rubbish, but it was enough for me to learn basic chords. But that started me off, and I went from there.
Yeah. And me seeing you in live bands over the years, not only are you an incredibly accomplished guitar player now, but you are an engaging frontman and lead singer. Where did the desire to sing come?
I think, just playing the guitar on its own didn't feel right to me. I kind of felt like just instinctively that you needed to sing as well. Obviously, you don't. You can just, there's lots of great guitar players who don't sing. But yeah, I think I wanted to be the full package, and probably, Weller was a singer and guitarist in the Jam. I guess I aimed for that. And then, there was a little sort of scratch band that I put together with a couple of mates. I think we gigged once, twice. We were probably awful, but I think we all go through that rite of passage as well. A mate of mine, still mates now, a guy called Mickey Couch. He was in a local band to us called the Sordid Details. Mick was a big Jam fan as well. And unbeknown to me, he was just putting this little fun band together. And they booked some studio time at Rich Pitch in Selly Oak in Birmingham. And I got a phone call asking me what I was doing. And he said, come down to Rich Pitch, bring your guitar. So I just went down, and that was it. I was in. I was the guitarist and the singer in this little fun band. But that went on to become the Dillingers, which is a band that I was in for, 10 or 15 years. And so that's where it really started properly for me.
Was that a covers band, or were they playing originals as well?
We did a couple of our own, but it was mainly a covers band. I enjoyed playing other people's tunes, and that's how it's developed, from a long time ago now. So yeah, I'm a covers guy generally. Not ashamed to admit it, really.
So looking at where we intersected, that was around about 2007. We had a mutual love and respect of Neil Finn and Crowded House. So how did you get into Crowded House? I'm interested to hear how people fall into following the band on tour to multiple shows, because there's some people I talk to and it's like they go see the odd show from a band, and then there's the diehards that seem to go show after show, year after year. Where did that start to form from a live music perspective for you?
The story with Crowded House, one of my musical regrets is that I bought Don't Dream It's Over on 12-inch. I think it was 86. And it was a big hit and it was great. Obviously, from the early 80s onwards, I was sort of into the mod thing, and it was like a one hit wonder to me. I didn't mind buying it. I wasn't too cool to not buy that record, but I didn't follow it up. So if I had done, I would have potentially seen Crowded House from a very early stage and
Mm.
seen them live lots more times than I did. So I missed them, and then I didn't really pick up on them again until the end of the Woodface album. So I didn't see them at all until Together Alone. And picking up on your question about going to see bands, either once on tour or several times, Crowded House used to try and make every show different. And they're not alone in that, but it's still, I think, they're in a minority of bands that really do welcome different things happening. They'll pick up on something and run with it. But their gigs were magic.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that the band were trying to do something different every night and welcoming that, because I'm going to a lot of bands and artists nowadays. We'll do multi-shows, but it's the same show every time you go, same set every time. Everything's choreographed in some way, shape or form. There's no real room to breathe. There's no requests. There's no shout outs. There's no real scope to go off script. Which I find really interesting nowadays, that bands don't try to do that. It doesn't mean it's not a good show, and it doesn't mean that the connection between the audience and the artist is diminished, but the live experience nowadays seems very, very different. So how did you fall into being a lead singer of a Crowded House tribute band called Crowded Out?
How did I get into that? I was in a band, just covers band, but not Crowded House. I'd started to do dip my toe in the water of doing solo acoustic gigs, and I was then asked to play a live music venue in Bromsgrove, and I was asked, would I just do a set as the opening act, and I just had this whim of an idea to, rather than just go and do a bunch of various different covers. I asked the guy that was organising it if it'd be okay if I sort of did a Crowded House set, and he was up for that, and we did about 6 or 7 numbers, and so that's essentially what happened. And so I then just thought, well, let's see if this has got legs, and put Crowded Out together. And we did some good gigs over the time we were together.
Crowded House then reformed. So, was there still room for a tribute band at that point? Or
yeah, I think in some respects, them reforming, it was a good thing. But I would also say, and I've said this to you before, I think that if you want to go and conquer tribute band world, you wouldn't pick Crowded House. And obviously, I don't mean that in any way as a criticism against Crowded House. And Neil Finn will be quite happy that a tribute band doesn't necessarily work. I think the thing is, Crowded House are one of those bands that people know more Crowded House songs than they realise, but they're just a band that write great songs, and that's it. So we played to modest but very appreciative audiences, but it's not the kind of act where loads and loads of people are going to go and see them.
And it was great to be in the modest audiences and see you play. All right. Let's dive into your album pick for Friday Vinyl Club. So this is The Weight of Your Love by Editors. So for transparency, my interaction with this band is really limited, and really by way of another artist. So a guy called Andy Burrows, who is the drummer of a band called Razorlight. He has got a stunning solo career that we latched onto, and he worked with the lead singer Tom Smith. So let's start with Editors. How did you find them? What drew you in?
I got into Editors, I think, Well, definitely the second album, An End Has a Start, which was 2007, I think. And I saw them live around that time. I did a couple of gigs. Then they released their third album, which is called In This Light and On This Evening, but it didn't quite grab the world in the same way that the first two records had, me included. And so I bought it, but I didn't really get into it. I bought it and then filed it really, um, and so that I sort of lost touch with them at that point. Then Editors released this first single from this album, "Weight of Your Love," and the song was called "A Ton of Love," and it's just a big tune. It starts off with a great guitar riff, and then it's a rock tune, but it's quite anthemic. When they play it live, the audience sing along, and it's just a biggie. And and that was great. They were back. I loved that single, and then the album followed. And I think a lot of people say that good records aren't the ones that hit you over the head straight away. They're the ones that grow, and this one did that with me. It wasn't an initial wow, all these songs are great. It took me a while to find the songs on the album, but after a few listens, I was just in love with it. Yeah, and it remains my. I say to people, if you send me to a desert island and I have to take one record, um, it's going to be this one.
So
Uh,
was that the sound of the record? Was it lyrical content? Was it? I've read that it was a departure from their previous albums. What was it that pulled you in? I mean, there's various themes on it when I've listened to it over the course of the last couple of days. Some really heavy themes, no pun intended. But what was it that was pulling you in there?
um, so the lineup changed. The original lineup, they were a four piece, and the original guitarist Chris Banovich left during the recording of the third album, but the three remaining members decided to carry on, and then they brought in two more guys and became the five piece. So these songs on The Weight of Your Love, I've heard some acoustic versions of those, and you can sort of hear that they're great songs in their own right. But then the band got hold of them, and it's just a big sound. It was, as you say, it was recorded in Nashville. There's different songs on there. They're all great. There isn't a weak song on there for me. There are some standout songs. A Ton of Love is the obvious single, but the album has got an absolute weight to it. Lyrically,
There are some really dark lyrics on this one. When I listen to it, and firstly the sound, right? It's cinematic. That
yeah,
opening track could easily have been a James Bond thing, right? It is. It blew me away listening to that opening track. Because that was the first time that I'd really invested in
yeah,
it. And I know you've been going on about Editors for so long, and that opening track hits
yeah.
you. And I was just like, wow. And I'm a lyrics guy, right? Wrapped up in some of the songs we both love, the melody's quite happy and light, and you've got some really dark lyrics in it. But on the Editors, you've got this cinematic soundscape, and you've got really dark lyrics looking at the pressure of being in a relationship. There's mortality in there, and there's a fragility about it, and there's actually a bit of a vulnerability around it that's hidden because the sound is so big.
Mm. Yeah, and you're right. And yeah, The Weight of Your Love is the title of the album. There are songs on there about love, but yeah, Tom Smith as a songwriter, he's definitely not a throwaway lyrics kind of guy. He's a thinker, um, and there are some very heavy moments on there. But as you say, the sound is cinematic. You mentioned the first track and the intro. Imagine that live.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it is Justin Lockie just on his guitar, but it's just massive, absolutely massive.
So what other tracks jump out to you on this particular album? Are there ones that you keep going back to, or
Um,
is it just is it always a
it's all of them.
intentional listening playthrough?
Yeah, but well, as I say, I love every track. I really do. But Ton of Love was the lead single. The last track on side one is a song called Nothing, and it's quite a slow song. There's strings on it, so again, it's got that cinematic feel to it and very heartfelt lyrics. And it's just a big tune. But live, they do a different version where it starts off slow and then drum beat kicks in, and it's done in a different way. It's done at a higher tempo. And again, it's one of my favorite songs in the live set. They don't always do it, so it's a treat when they do. And chatting with the band's management, a couple called Jackie and Rob, who used to run gigs at the Flapper and Firkin in Birmingham, and then they were having a go at band management, and just happened to strike lucky with editors. I've been fortunate enough to have the odd chat with Rob, and the track Nothing, the live version of that song, they tried to record it that way, but couldn't quite pull it off, or at least not all the band were happy with that version. So it hasn't been released in that higher tempo format, and the version that they were happy with is the one that's on the record,
Mm.
which is sort of laden with strings and uh, you know and sounds the way it does.
I
But
think there's a bit of a magic when that happens though, isn't there? Where you have a band who lay down a track on an album, but when it goes into that live arena, it becomes something else. You know, the one that springs to mind for me is actually Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds did a song called Jubilee Street, and you know the album version on Push the Sky Away is a really cinematic but slow tempo all the way through. My God, you see Nick Cave perform that live on stage, it blows your mind. You can't even believe it's the same song. But when that happens, I think there's something special about you do get that contrast
yeah,
when you're at a live gig.
yeah, and you feel like you're seeing something that doesn't exist anywhere else, which adds to the magic for sure.
Is there any track on the album that was a real favourite but over time has faded, or the other way around?
I would say all of the songs took a while to, apart from A Ton of Love, which is probably the most instant on the record. Uh, but honestly, there's no weak song on there. Every song on that record is great.
Mm.
I don't fast forward any of them.
One track that really stood out for me was the end track, Bird of Prey. I played it 3 times back to back. Absolutely blew me away. I just thought that was an incredible track.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm getting the shivers thinking about it.
let's talk about the sleeve artwork. You've got it there in front of you. What do you think about that? Is it a rose?
Yeah, it's a rose. You know, it's part of what we love about music. Looking at the sleeves and looking at the artwork and absorbing all that. But I love this artwork just on its own. It really grabbed me. The artist is a photographer called Charles Emerson, and I think the band's management just happened to see this artwork in an exhibition, and they liked it. And they said, "Yeah, we'll have that for the new album." And if you turn the album upside down, that is actually how he photographed the rose. So the rose is suspended upside down in a tank of water, and he dripped different coloured oils in, and the oil sort of
Wow.
dissipates in the water, and merges with the flower, and then he picks the best shot.
When I look at that, it looks like it's kind of dying, right? So he's managing to get that effect, but in a really, really artistic way. And I do prefer album art that has got a little bit more to it, that has had a little bit of artistic thought, and this is definitely falls into that category. Would you recommend this as the entry point into editors as a band? Or if you were giving it to somebody new to editors, where would you start?
That's a tricky one. I think Most people would probably say the first or second album, primarily because you've got Smokers outside the hospital doors and you've got the Racing Rats, which were two singles. I mean, they're not a hit singles band, but those two songs are probably their most well known. But actually, my love for this album is is just so big that I probably would just say to somebody, just go and listen to that. But I would caveat that and say play it 4 or 5 times before before you decide.
Yeah, you need to invest time. You need to kind of allow the songs to marinate, I guess. That brings us on to, my next question, because not everybody's got the chance to consume vinyl nowadays. It's a hectic world we live in. Where do you find yourself listening to music? Are you listening to vinyl? Have you got a space in the house to do it now? Or
I still have my Henwood stacker system, and I do play vinyl occasionally, but I struggle with digital. I guess because I'm still I want to invest in an artist and in the music, so I kind of value it more if I've invested.
yeah.
So I'm still playing CDs.
Honestly, I remember last time I visited, your CD collection would put many people to shame. I mean, it's vast and alphabetically ordered, and everything's in its place. No, there's no OCD going on there at all.
No, hang on. I reckon we had this conversation at the time because, yes, they're in alphabetical order, but they're not in perfect alphabetical order. They're easier together, but they're not. It's not absolute perfect alphabetical order.
I know. I laughed at you back then, but then if you come in the vinyl den now, you'd see how 100% anal I am now with the vinyl, and everything's in its place.
All right.
Right. Any guest that comes on here, we ask for a Friday spins, a recommendation of something that you're listening to at the moment, anything that may jump out.
Well, you'd be unsurprised to hear me say, because I've been banging on for a little while now. So a band called Superlung. I will spell it for the listeners. It's Supalung. They are fantastic. It's a guy called Sam Brooks. He's a singer-songwriter. He's been around a while and he's got 2 or 3 albums under his belt. But this one, to kind of quote Sam's story, is he found that the songs he was writing were perhaps just a little bit more more upbeat, a little bit more jolly, and he decided he was going to go with a band and release it under a band moniker rather than the next Sam Brooks solo album. And so yeah, he's put a band together, and they are actually in the middle of just a little run of autumn winter dates.
Is there any particular track that we should gravitate to first for Superlung with an A?
A track called Shadow. I think that's almost the most obvious one. Again, it's difficult to pick. They're all great. Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much, Andy, for bringing your record and your story to the Friday Vinyl Club. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. It's always amazing to hear how music becomes part of our lives, not just in the sound, but in the memories that it holds. To our listeners, you can find today's album and a few of the tracks we've talked about on our companion playlist, the Friday Vinyl Club Spotify playlist. The link's in the notes. And if you want to contact us, please feel free. Instagram at JamieB1973, or you can email me at thefridayvinylclub@hotmail.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share with a friend, follow, or leave a comment, as it helps others to find the show. Andy, really appreciate your time. Did you enjoy that?
I did. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. It's good catching up with you.
Yeah, great catching up with you too, mate. This has been the Friday Vinyl Club, where every day feels like Friday and every album tells a story. Keep listening, keep your album spinning, and we'll speak to you next time. See you later. Bye.